Hey, everybody. Welcome to this month's episode of the Work with Purpose podcast. My name is Randy Mahoney Jr., and I'm glad that you're joining us today on this episode. So if you're new to our career podcast, new to our episodes, we usually publish our podcast episodes on the fourth Friday of the month during the time that we are in seasons. Now, each episode that we bring to you during the time we're in our seasons, it's designed to give you advice, education, and encouragement on your career journey. And as we get started today, I want to say thanks so much for watching and for listening. Glad you're with us for this episode. All right, so as we start this month's episode, we have a pretty special topic for you this month. This month, we are taking a look back and a listen back to some of our podcast episodes in an episode we're calling The Best of the Podcast So Far. Now, if you're new to our podcast, we've been around for about 3 years now. At the time that you are hearing this episode, we've been around since the year 2020, later in the fall, sometime then. And this episode, it's going to give you a few different clips from some selected episodes from our first 4 podcast seasons. Now, as part of this episode, I took a look at all of our podcast episodes, and I'm bringing you some clips from some of our most viewed, most commented on, most engaged with episodes from our podcast, from our first season up to now, from our podcast platform, but also our YouTube channel, private Facebook community, and things like that. And then as we get into this episode as well, I want to remind you that you can find the links for any of the full episodes that I talk with you through, give you clips from. You can find those at our website, WWPCast.com, WWPcast.com. Also, you can find links in any of the links mentioned in this episode in our show notes. So on your favorite podcast app where you're listening to us, look in your show notes. It'll have the links there. And then also, if you are watching the YouTube version of our show, you'll be able to find the links for that as well. All right, so as we get started on this episode, we'll go to our first best of clip. Now, to kind of set this clip up for you, it comes from season 2, episode 1 of our podcast, where I was able to actually interview my brother, swim coach Scott Thacker of Roanoke College, which is based in Virginia. Now, in this clip you're about to watch and hear, Coach Thacker, he shared 3 things that he learned from one of his swim coaches, Mr. Doug Fonder. Now, you might be tempted to kind of push the snooze button with a clip like this or fast forward past it, but I want to get you to pause for a second and encourage you that even if you might not be a big sports fan, I believe this clip will give you some really good takeaways that you can apply to your career right now or your current working life and really gauge where you're at. Are you putting in the work? Are you putting in the effort and diligence that you need to work with purpose in your career? So right now, let's go to that clip from season 2, episode 1 of our podcast. Check it out.
Yeah, so for those that know Doug is what many coaches and swimmers would consider old school. Okay, old school coach. So higher volume, he's very serious. Just kind of that old school group of coaches that tend to do more old school things, like a lot of hard work, a lot of heavy volume, a lot of heavy intensity. And so one thing that I learned from him is you can't be afraid to put in the work, and you can't be afraid to put in the time, the energy, the effort, and you can't be afraid to put the volume on. And I mean that in everything. You can't be afraid of the work that you need to do as a professional to be successful. So one, don't be afraid to do the work. And the second thing is that I had a really great relationship with Doug, and so my swimmer to coach relationship with Doug was kind of one of the first examples of how beneficial a good relationship with coach and athlete can be. I think just naturally our personalities got along really well. I really liked the style of coach that he was, super intense, super some might say brash, but super direct, and which is what I liked as an athlete. So we got along really, really well, and I had a really great relationship with him. When our family was going through some trials and tribulations, Doug was somebody that was very consistent for me and someone that really helped me a lot. And so practice was something that obviously I think I physically needed during that time, but also I needed that interaction with him just as an outside party, someone who wasn't a part of our family, someone who wasn't, my family, right? Just someone who is kind of on the outside looking in, but also a part of something that I really cared about. So And those two things definitely are big things in my day-to-day life as a coach.
Kind of transitioning now to maybe you've had your first experience at coaching in a YMCA type facility. Kind of, you said it was kind of like being thrown into the deep end, right? Of coaching. Were there any big lessons that you learned from that experience, which kind of led you to continue to be a better coach into where you are now?
Yeah, the simplest one is that you can't do it alone. I had to ask for a lot of help because there's a lot of really simple things in coaching that you go into it like simple administrative work. It doesn't matter if it's budgeting or doing meet entries or billing or signing people up. There are a lot of administrative things that I had absolutely no idea about. And so I just had to say, hey, to my boss or to our parents group, hey, I need help with these things. I don't know how to do them. I don't want you to do them for me, but I want you to teach me how to do them. And so the biggest lesson is, one, you can't do it alone. And then from there, not being afraid to ask for help when you need it. And three, humbling yourself enough to always know that you don't always have all the answers. You don't always know how to do the things that maybe you're tasked to do, so don't be afraid to ask for help.
Again, that clip was from my episode with swim coach Scott Thacker of Roanoke College, based in Virginia. That was part of Season 2, Episode 1 of the Work with Purpose podcast. All right, well, stick around after the break. We've got more great podcast clips for you coming up, all part of our Best of the Podcast So Far episode right here on the Work with Purpose podcast. Stick around. Hi, everyone. Randy Mahoney here, career coach and host of the Work with Purpose podcast. I want to take a quick moment here and tell you about my free ebook that I've made just for you called the Job Search Checklist. Now, from being a career coach for over 6 years, from my years of personal job searching and helping many adults make more informed career choices, I am well aware that job searches can often take a long time, and sometimes they can end up with you facing a lot of frustration. In the Job Search Checklist ebook, you'll get a 6-step process that I believe will help you know what to prepare for as you start your job search. Also, I believe the Job Search Checklist will help you know if you're on the right track to find a new job, or it can help you change direction to a more intentional job search. So, what are you waiting for? Stop being confused and get a clear path forward. Get my free ebook, The Job Search Checklist, right now. You can get that by visiting our website, www.pcast.com/job-search-checklist. Again, you can get your free Job Search Checklist ebook by visiting www.pcast.com/job-search-checklist. And now, back to the show. Welcome back to the Work with Purpose podcast. If you're just joining us so far, we are in our Best of the Podcast So Far episode. We're giving you a couple clips and snippets from our first 4 seasons of the podcast so far. So really great chance to kind of reflect back on where we've been, give you some highlights from that. So now we're going to our second clip in this episode. And this next clip, it comes from our first season, actually Season 1, Episode 2, to be exact. So in this clip you're about to watch and hear right now, I break down for you a few of the elements that I believe are part of what it means to work with purpose in your career journey. And then also, besides that, this clip will also help you know more about my time running my own career coaching business called AeroPath Coaching. So right now, here's the clip from Season 2. Here's the clip from Season 1, Episode 2. Check it out. To give you a little bit of a background on this, the idea of, working with purpose or wanting to be somebody and wanting to help other people work with purpose, that first idea came back in early 2016 or 2017 when I made the decision to, really take a step of faith and really think about my life and my career more intentionally, and chose to start and develop my own career coaching business called AeroPath Coaching LLC. So made my own business here in the Midwest, and the desire, was to work with adults and help adults adults make wise career decisions by giving thoughtful support, teaching, and coaching and things like that. Really, from a time of introspection during that time and just prayer and things, from a time when my life was really kind of in a down spot, that's where this career coaching business started, and this whole idea of working with purpose started in my own life. So defining work with purpose, I would tell you that working with purpose involves 3 key things and then 2 options. So let's talk about those. So first, the 3 key things are you start by understanding your values. Number 2, you start to know your strengths and work in them. The third thing is that you start to grow more aware of your personality. And then here are the 2 options. The first option is that you can do a diligent search for companies and roles and positions that would be a great match for all of those first 3 options. And then option number 2 is that you could choose to create your own role. It could be things like your own business or an entrepreneurial thing and stuff like that. Okay, a great clip right there reminding you about what it can mean to work with purpose in your own career, all coming from season 1, episode 2 of our podcast. Hope you enjoyed that. So after hearing that clip, if I would add anything new right now here in 2023 when you're hearing this episode, I would say that working with purpose really can be boiled down to really 2 things. Number 1, being aware of what your top abilities, your unique skills are, your top abilities, your top skills. There's that awareness piece. But then working with purpose also goes to a second step of serving others, making the intentional choice to serve others with your top skills and abilities. Moving from kind of a self-focused view of your life and your career journey and really trying to make the choice to serve other people with your top skills. In our next clip for this episode, this comes from season 2, episode 2 of our podcast, where I talked all about the career skill of networking. In this clip that you'll about to watch and hear in just a second, I'll share about number 1, a short definition of what networking is. Plus, I'll give you a couple reasons that I would say to you why networking is still a valuable skill for you to keep developing in your career for today. You can check that out right now. I would define networking for your career this way. Networking is when you reach out and nurture relationships with other professionals. Some reasons that I think networking is still important for your career, and I have kind of a newsflash for you. Please, there's a ton of articles online that says, you can be like a self-made person. You don't need anybody else. Take it from me, somebody who is currently has employment of teaching career readiness skills. I do this podcast on a part-time basis. I've got experience doing my own career coaching business. I'm here to tell you as clear as I can. You will need to network with other professionals to get ahead in your career, to get to the place that you desire to be in your career. You cannot get there by yourself. And that's actually the first reason that I would tell you networking is still important and continues to be important for your career, is that to get where you want to go in your career, whatever that is, you will need the help of someone else. Now, let me explain that to you. Let's say if you want to have the job of getting, teaching as a professor at the college level. The reason that you might want to reach out to professionals who are working at a college level, whether, a person who is a full-time professor or an adjunct or a part-time professor, the reason why finding and reaching out and nurturing those relationships with other professionals like that would be helpful to you is that you can develop conversations with people who are doing a job or jobs that you would like to do. You're kind of reaching out to people who are, a couple steps ahead of you on your career journey. So you're making that contact with them. And then also in the networking process, you're continuing to practice your social skills and you're continuing to learn from their experience. You got to take on that mindset that to get where you want to go in your career, you've got to accept the idea that you will need the help of someone else, because there are people who are further along than you, who know things that you need to know that you don't know right now, who have more skills that you need to develop and learn about, and who have more experience. So that's the first reason. Reason number 2, like I alluded to just a couple of seconds ago, networking is important for your career because it gives you a learning opportunity that you wouldn't get otherwise. One way that I think of initially is that if you're somebody who, similar to myself, if you're more of an introverted person, you kind of get your energy from your time being alone. Networking, it forces people like us to get out of our shell and practice our social skills, our conversational skills. And we need to do that because if we had our way as an introverted person, we would kind of just not talk to anybody, do our own thing, stay in our lane. But networking is an important process for introverts and extroverts, for all people, because it gives us some learning opportunity, whether it's practicing our social skills, whether it's a chance to ask really good questions of other professionals. You really enter into a really great learning process that's pretty unique. The third reason that I would tell you that networking has been important for your career and it'll continue to be important for your career is that networking can allow you to tap into something called the hidden job market. The hidden job market. Now, if you haven't heard of this term, the hidden job market, before, I'll try to sum it up as best as I can. But the hidden job market is that there are job postings for many companies, different industries, different fields. There are job postings that are out there that are never posted on a company's career website or join our team page of their website. So the way that you as a professional can access those job postings or job leads that are coming up for certain companies that are not posted online yet is through building those intentional relationships with other professionals. All right, well, that clip was from Season 2, Episode 2 of our podcast, talking about the importance of networking as a skill for your career journey. One other reminder, if you want links to any of these full episodes, just to learn a little bit more about what they're talking about, you can find them if you're listening to the audio version of our show in your favorite podcast app. Take a look in the show notes that we have there. You can see all the links for the episodes that we have there. Also, if you're watching the YouTube version of our show, look in the description below the video, and you can see all of our links there. And then as a third place, you can also find this episode on our website, WWPCast.com. Okay, well, after this coming break, we've got one more podcast clip for you, and we're going to discuss the 6 different work values. It's one that you do not want to miss. So stay tuned. You're listening to our Best of the Podcast So Far episode right here on the Work with Purpose podcast. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Work with Purpose podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this month's episode. This month, we are going back in time a little bit, and we're giving you some clips and some highlights from our podcast so far from our first 4 seasons. We're calling it our Best of the Podcast So Far episode. And we've got one more clip for you as we finish up this month's episode. And now this clip that you'll hear in just a moment, it comes from our Season 1, Episode 3 episode from our podcast, all about understanding your personal values. And in this clip, we're going to talk you through the 6 different work values. I think you'll find this very valuable in my work with adults in their different career journey, meeting them, helping them make career decisions. You as a professional, knowing what your work values are, what your top ones are, is very helpful when you get to the point of trying to evaluate a company to work for, or an industry to go into, or even considering a job offer. So I think you'll find this very valuable. So you can check it out right now, a clip from Season 1, Episode 3 of our podcast, all about the 6 different work values. Check it out. So now let's start to define work values and talk about what work values are a little bit more. So when we say work values, we mean those important personal characteristics that you express in your job, or those things that are important to you. Also, when it comes to work values, I think as we go into this conversation, I think it's important that we get a baseline for what we're talking about, get a common language. And what I want to talk with you when it comes to work values are the 6 universal work values. I think they'll give you a good frame of reference, and we can kind of be on the same brain wave with that. And the 6 universal work values, These come from the ONET online website, and it's a popular website for career information. And if you want to check out this website for yourself, I'll make sure that I put a link for that in the show notes for this episode, so you can check that out on your own. But let's go through the 6 work values right now. So value number 1 of the ONET online work values is achievement. And what that means is that you might be a person who likes to have a feeling of accomplishment when it comes to your job. And also, if you're a person who values achievement highly as a work value, you might value the idea of being able to use your strongest skills and your strongest abilities in your jobs. That's the value of achievement. And value number 2 is independence. And what that means is that if this is a high work value for you, you value the ability to make your own decisions, or you might like the ability to work on your own, set your own schedule, be trusted by your manager and your leadership to do your job responsibilities. So we talked about achievement. We've talked about independence. Number 3 on the work value list is recognition. And what that means is that if this is a high work value for you, you like being recognized for a job well done. You also might prefer jobs or companies to work for where there's a clear path for advancement, for taking on more responsibility, being open to leadership opportunities, and things like that. Value number 4 is relationships. And what that work value means is that if this is a value that's important to you, you like being able to help others or serve other people in your job. That's very important to you. So groups of jobs that might fit with this work value of relationships would be, any kind of healthcare worker like doctors, nurses, EMT, paramedic, and things like that. Also, for the relationships work value, you might be a person who values your relationships with your coworkers. That's a critical thing for you if relationships is a high work value. All right, so far we've talked about the work value of achievement, independence, recognition, relationships, and now we're at value number 5, which is support. Now, with this work value, what we're talking about is that if this is a high work value for you, you are a person who values your manager and your supervisor a lot in your work, and it's important for you to know as an employee that your manager or those who are in leadership above you, that they have your back, that you feel supported and you feel valued as an employee. And then the 6th and last work value that we'll talk about today is working conditions. And now when we're talking about this work value, what we mean is that if this is a high work value for you, it might be important for you to have things like a steady employment throughout the year. You might be very focused on making sure that your pay or your compensation is similar between yourself and other coworkers in your organization. Some groups of jobs that might be a good fit for this work value would be jobs that have a union tied in with them. So think about jobs that are in the building trades, like being an electrician, being a plumber, being an educator or a teacher. All right, and so really quickly, let's summarize those work values, the 6 that we're talking about today. Number 1 was achievement. Number 2 was independence. Number 3 was recognition. Number 4 was relationships. Number 5 was support. And number 6 was working conditions. All right, well, that brings us to the end of this month's episode of the Work with Purpose podcast. As we finish up here, I want to say a couple things before we let you go for this episode. Number 1, thank you so much for watching and for listening to our podcast, whether you're joining us on the audio version from your favorite podcast app, or if you are checking out the YouTube version of our show. As we finish this episode, I want to invite you that if you want to keep the conversation going, definitely connect with us on LinkedIn. You can find us on LinkedIn by logging into LinkedIn and then searching for the Work with Purpose podcast. We send different posts there from when we're publishing episodes, some behind the scenes things we update there as well. Also, if you want to keep, give some more input to our podcast, consider joining our private Facebook group. When you log into facebook.com, you can search for our group there. It's called the Work with Purpose Community. Again, Facebook. Find our Facebook group there for the Work with Purpose community. Also, one more thing, I want to make sure that you know, if you want to stay up to date on what we're doing with the podcast, I do want to invite you to join our email list. right now, I'm giving a freebie away. It's a free ebook called the Job Search Checklist. If you look in the show notes of this episode, you can get a link to join our email list and get your free copy of that job search checklist. Really great, helpful step-by-step checklist to help you start to have a very effective and focused job search. You can find that in the show notes for this episode, as well as you can find that in the video description if you're watching us here on YouTube. All right, well, that brings us to the end of this month's episode of the Work with Purpose podcast. Thanks so much for sticking with us this season so far. It was great to kind of take a look back and reflect on where we've been as we think about where we want to go in the future to better serve and help you as a viewer, as a listener, make a wise and informed career choice on your career journey. So again, until our next month's episode, my name's Randy Mahoney Jr., and I'm reminding you of this. You've been made with purpose, so work with purpose. I'll see you soon. Hey, thanks so much for checking out the Work with Purpose podcast here on YouTube. If you found this episode helpful, if it encouraged you, please click the like button, the subscribe button, and hit the bell icon here on YouTube so that you can stay in the know when we update new episodes and that you don't miss a thing. Also, be sure to check out our website at WWPCast.com. That's kind of our home base for everything. So until next time, I'm Randy Mahoney Jr. telling you to work with purpose.